Good afternoon. Wow, it's cavernous in here. Before we get started, I wanted to take a couple of minutes to try and get to know everyone in the audience a little better, just so I can adjust my presentation appropriately. Since we're co-located with VS Live, I'm curious to know how many people are joining this presentation from the VS Live side of the house. If I can just see a show of hands. Wow, okay, a few. Excellent. It's actually cool to see VS Live here. I didn't realize there was so much power in the next release. I enjoyed Bilge's keynote. I hope you guys did too. How many people in the room have written any kind of managed application, be it desktop, Pocket PC, smartphone? Wow. This presentation will be very familiar. How many people here have a puppy at home less than a year old? Excellent. Let's talk later. Mine's going through a little bit of an attitude problem. Maybe you have some tips. How many people have done development for Pocket PC or smartphone? Native or managed? Wow. All the MDC. Oh, no, keep your hands up. How many are doing it in native code? Managed? Excellent. All right. Thank you very much. My name is Neil Enns. I'm a lead program manager in the mobile devices group. I work on designing user interface and API for Pocket PC and smartphone. I'm really excited, in case you couldn't tell, to be here today to present. I love coming to events like this to get people excited about developing for our platform. I perhaps have the longest titled session of anyone at MDC, but it's actually very straightforward. It's about .NET. Today I'll give you a quick overview of .NET development on Pocket PC and smartphone, a little bit about why you might be interested in doing that. And then I'll go straight to a demo. I've been to many trade shows, and I've found that the easiest way to get people excited about development is to show it. It's one thing to babble with slides. It's another to write code. So we'll get that done first. Once you've seen the demonstration, we'll go back to some slides, and I'll walk you through some of the major components that make up the compact framework. Give you a taste of how it's similar to what you've experienced on the desktop and how it can help you write productive applications. Then we'll go back to the demonstration, since the first demo is never really very pretty, and we'll clean it up a bit. Then I'll show you a real-world application. I've also found that it's one thing to show a quick little demonstration, but that invariably leads to the question, yeah, but can you write a real app with it? I'll show you a real application and give you more information on it. Throughout the session, I'll actually act as a little bit of a tour guide. I only have 1 hour. The compact framework is a large subject to cover, and so throughout my session, I'll reference other sessions you may be interested in. I encourage you to take your show guide that's in your little badge holder, and as I get to slides with resources, highlight the ones you're interested in. The sessions start on page 28. This is my third MDC event, and when I'm not at MDC and I'm working back in Redmond, I read lots of moblogs. I love reading sites like Slashdot, Gizmodo, Engadget, and it seems like every day somebody has a new, exciting, and interesting mobile device. Sometimes they're Microsoft devices, sometimes they're Nokia devices, but the whole space is just exploding. New devices, new applications. It makes me giddy thinking about how many cool technologies are coming out today. And I really hope to share with you today how you can use the compact framework to target the Microsoft Pocket PC and smartphone devices. Our development platform is very rich. It encompasses a wide range of different technologies. And I admit that if you're first coming to the platform, it may be a little bit difficult to figure out which technology to use. To be very clear, today I'm talking about the compact framework. We have other sessions on native development, but today I'll be focusing on how you can use managed code to build for Pocket PC and smartphone. The last time I was at MDC, I had a lot of fun, and I talked with a lot of customers. And they came up to me and they were telling me stories about how they were using .NET in their enterprise solutions. They had deployed desktop applications. They maybe had SQL Server running in their back end, a couple of web services, and it was working fine. The common question was, I've got this infrastructure. I've made the investment in .NET on the desktop. How do I use those wicked cool Pocket PC and smartphone devices to mobile enable my applications? How do I take that information and give it to my mobile sales force or my end customers? That's where .NET Compact Framework and Visual Studio come into play. You use the same tool that you know, Visual Studio.NET, with the same web services that you've either already written or already used from an external company, with the same back-end servers to bring the information to a new range of mobile devices. The web services in Visual Studio make it very easy to pull that information down to your mobile device. As promised, we're going to leap straight into a demonstration because I never cease to be amazed at how powerful the web service and Visual Studio.NET combo is when used with a mobile device. This is VS.NET 2003, very familiar. I've installed the Pocket PC and smartphone SDKs for the 2003 second edition devices. In this case, I'll start a Visual Basic application and select Smart Device Application. This actually tells Visual Studio I want to target Pocket PC, smartphone, or Windows CE. I'll give my project a name. And the next step is to select the target device and type of application. In this case, Pocket PC, Windows application is what I'm after. Visual Studio will customize the user interface, give me the correctly sized form for my application, and update the device controls to reflect those supported by Pocket PC. You'll also notice in the top right, I can select from a wide range of physical devices or target emulator images for different screen sizes, screen resolutions, and orientations. In this case, I'm going to target the physical Pocket PC device I have on stage. So I'm a UI guy, first and foremost, so I think every application, first and foremost, needs user interface. So let's throw a little bit on, and I promise this does not reflect on my abilities to design pretty user interfaces. Since this is a currency converter, the first thing we'll need is a place for the end user to enter the currency amount. So that's the first field. We then need the source currency and the destination currency. We need a label to show the result of the conversion and a button to kick it all off. And I'll make a feeble attempt at making it usable by saying what the button does. We'll leave labels for the rest of the fields for some exercise to the reader. Now that I've got this hooked up UI-wise, I need currency information. I could, of course, create a text file, load in different currency exchange rates, store it on the device, and use that for the conversion. But I have a device that knows how to get on the network. It has GPRS connectivity. It basically has connectivity anywhere I have cell phone coverage. Let's leverage that connectivity to use a web service for the currency exchange rates. So we're always using the latest live data. The way you do this is exactly the same as on the desktop. Anyone who's used web services on the PC, this looks exactly the same. There's no magic. I have the web service address. I put it in. Visual Studio connects to the web service, gets the information about the methods it supports, which is exactly one, get rate. I give it a name to use in my application and add it. The beauty of this in the Compact Framework side is I don't have to worry about network connectivity. The Compact Framework will do all the work to get me up on GPRS, on Wi-Fi, through a desktop if I'm connected via ActiveSync. It's all done for me. I just have to put the web service in and use it. Let's hook up the convert button. What I want to do is store in the text label the result of the conversion. And what am I converting? I'm converting the currency amount, which is in text box 1, by the web service. And I'm just remembering, as it is a live demo, I need to create the web service first. So let's do that. I do that by just declaring a variable to access the web service. And so with that, I can actually perform a conversion. That single line is all it takes to get the web service connected and up and running so I can use it. So going back to the conversion, I'll use the myService object with its getRate method to do the conversion. And you'll notice that I'm getting the autocomplete information that tells me about the method. I don't have to go and refer to documentation. It's there for me to use. So I need a source country and the destination country. And those are in the 2 text boxes on my form. That's it. That's everything I need to do the conversion, store the result, and give it to the end user. You'll notice there's no connectivity-specific code in here at all. When I press F5, Visual Studio will build the application and deploy it directly to my Pocket PC, which I didn't actually try immediately before the demo. There we go. It is deploying. We should be able to see, whoops, wrong button. There we go. Excellent. So if I can grab my stylus replacement, since I left it in Seattle, let's give it a quick try. We'll convert $12 from the US to Canada and say convert. Now in this case, because I'm connected via ActiveSync, the device is smart enough to know that it should use the Ethernet connection provided by my laptop. If I were disconnected, it would be smart enough to go over GPRS and get that without me having to do any work. The result came back, US dollar is doing just fine, it's only $16 Canadian. So very simple example of using web services on Pocket PC. We'll come back to this later and we'll elaborate on it a little more. Now that I've given you a taste of development, let's go into detail on the components that are available in the Compact framework. This is the overall architecture view of the Compact framework. It should look very familiar if you've seen the architecture for the desktop. I'll actually walk you through the core services provided by the Compact framework for your application. Then we'll talk about how you can get connected to data that may live on remote servers to bring it down to the device, both at low level or using web services. Then we'll talk about how to store that data locally, since with these devices, they're sometimes connected. You may not have network connectivity and want to store information locally. Finally, we'll talk about how you can build a user interface around the data that's on your device. The Common Language Runtime is the very low-level engine that allows your Compact framework applications to run. For those of you that have done desktop development, a lot of the aspects are the same. I have to say, of all the stuff on the slide, my favorite point is you don't have to worry about uninitialized pointers. I am the world's worst C or C++ developer because I don't understand pointers. With the Compact framework, I don't worry about it. I just write my code, I concentrate on the business logic or the user interface or what I want my end users to see, and I don't have to spend a lot of time worrying about maintenance issues in my code. Similarly, garbage collection is done in the same way as on the desktop, so it's easier to do memory management on the device. Exception handling is something I love. I love doing custom exceptions so that it's easier in my applications to understand where things went wrong, and also to handle exceptions for things that I may not expect. Since the Compact framework is in its first version currently, V2 is being discussed at other sessions, we do provide platform invocation to let you get at Win32 APIs, as well as business logic you may already have that you want to leverage. And of course, you can pick between VB and C# as your development language. For VB developers, this is actually the only way you can leverage your VB knowledge on smartphone devices. So if you want to do smartphone development, VB.NET is the language for you. Once you've got the basic architecture at the bottom to run your applications, the next thing that people talk to me about is getting data on the devices. It's not so much the small form factor that gets people excited, it's the fact that the devices are connected with Wi-Fi or GPRS. There's actually 4 different ways in the compact framework to get data from a remote source. If you're at the very lowest level, you love having total control over everything, you can use sockets, just like on the desktop. Direct access to a port on a machine somewhere, you own the protocol, you do everything. If you prefer a little bit of assistance, you can take a step up and either use streams to transfer data or the HTTP objects to talk to a web server. These are all great ways for people that enjoy a little bit more control and flexibility in their designs, but by far and away the most popular method is web services. Just like on the desktop, we support a wide range of encoding types based on SOAP as an industry standard, and even support secure socket layer. When you talk about mobile devices, it's a little bit difficult, as opposed to an enterprise sense, to control the entire network. And so something like SSL allows you to build security into your applications so you know the data going from the server to your device is encrypted. A very powerful way to make use of data in an enterprise situation on public networks. Once you have the data on the device, the next step is to store it somewhere. In the old days, you'd probably use a text file, which works pretty well, but once you start talking about larger data sets, it's not necessarily the most efficient. The compact framework supports ADO.NET, just like the desktop. Even better, there's a customized version of SQL called SQL Server CE, specifically designed for storing data on mobile devices. It gives you very efficient and complex queries on the device. You can treat it just like SQL Server on the desktop, and it gives you managed interfaces directly through ADO.NET. This is a great topic that I can't do justice in 1 hour. Before we move on to the rest of my session, let me give you a few pointers. If there's one session that I say you attend around SQL Server CE, it would be a real-world implementation. Go and see how an actual group at Microsoft, CRM Mobile, use SQL CE as the core infrastructure for their application. It's a real application that we're really selling to end users that uses SQL CE. If you're a raging geek like me and you love to know what's coming next, go see the talk on Laguna, which is the next release of SQL Server CE. Or try it yourself. We have hands-on labs right across the hall. You can actually sit down and write your own code with SQL Server CE and see how it works. Once you've got data on the device and you've stored it on the device, you generally need to show it to your end user. And that's where the user interface aspects of the compact framework come in. There's a wide range of controls, and they're actually tailored specifically to each device. So if you add a drop-down control for Pocket PC, it looks different than the drop-down control on a smartphone. You can also extend these controls on your own by doing development against either the existing controls and adding additional functionality, or writing one from scratch. Since it is the compact framework, there are a few bits of functionality that you may be expecting to see but aren't there, such as printing or GDI+. We do have partners, however, in the printing area if that's something you're interested in. Here's a list of the many controls that are supported. Don't worry too much about writing this all down feverishly, since Visual Studio shows you the ones that are available. I mentioned a little bit about extensibility. The cool thing about the Forms extensibility is, A, you can write your own, but also you can leverage controls from partners. I was reading, I had 2 months of MSDN magazines that I hadn't read yet that I was reading on the plane, and I was blown away at how many .NET controls were available. And we're really starting to see those developers target the compact framework as well to give you that same power of third-party controls for signature capture, address verification, and things like that directly in the compact framework. So very powerful. If you want to write your own, we have a sample online on how to do that as well. I talked a little bit earlier about platform invocation. This is a great way to get access to existing business logic you may already have. There are lots of enterprises that have gone off, done development for business logic on the PC that they'd like to leverage on the device, and they don't necessarily want to rewrite it in managed code. You can take that code, use the native DLLs on the device, and then wrap it with .NET to get access to that functionality. I've actually done this on occasion for some old code that I've had lying around that I wanted to make use of and didn't have the patience to do the conversion. There's a whole bunch of functionality existing. There's also a bunch of new work we're doing in this area in the Whidbey release, which actually Bill G didn't show in his keynote, but adds a lot of power. If you're interested in what's coming, you should attend the Whidbey Development for Smart Devices talk, which I think is either later today or first thing tomorrow. It's a great way to get more information on platform invocation. We have a couple of articles as well, both an introduction and an advanced. At this point, actually, I was supposed to plug a talk by Samim on application deployment, but sadly his session was this morning, so it's a little difficult for me to tell you to go and see it. However, it will be on the conference DVD. Bill G talked a little bit about this in his keynote. Writing your application is just the first part of the battle. Getting it deployed to your customers or your end users is another matter. Visual Studio includes for devices a built-in tool to package your application up into a deployment cab. It creates a basic cab file with your application and any references you may depend on. However, it doesn't include things like the SQL Server CE runtime that are external to your app. They do keep the temporary files around, so you can use those to elaborate on the cab file and add extra components if necessary. And I encourage you to look at Samim's talk for more information on how to not only package, but deploy to your customers as well. So that's a run-through of some of the major functionality that's in the Compact framework. Let's go back to our application and clean it up a little bit using some of the techniques that I've talked about. If you'll recall, the user interface was a little bit unfriendly. Converting 12 USAs to Canada is something that Canada has tried many times, but just doesn't work. In reality, you want to convert a US dollar to a Canadian dollar or to a euro, and having the end user type in the country name doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Unfortunately, this is how the web service expects its information. It wants the country name, not the currency name. So what I actually did last week is I built myself a tool that takes a text file with country name and currency name pairs and builds a nice array out of them. I wrote that for the desktop using C#, and I'd actually like to leverage that in my Pocket PC VB application. To do that, I'll stop debugging and add a reference to the code that I wrote last week. If I can click on the right button. By simply adding it, I now have all that capability available to my application. It doesn't matter that it was written in C#. I can leverage it from VB just the same. We need to make a few user interface changes to work with this. I'd actually like to replace the text boxes with a drop-down control. One for the source currency and one for the destination. Whoops, wrong one. One for the destination currency. Now that I've done those, let's look at how we can hook up the data from that utility into these drop-downs. When the application first runs, what I'd like to do is use that utility to read from the text file. I need to do that twice, once for the source and once for the destination. Let's start with the source. So that creates the My Country list. And you'll notice that I'm auto-completing through the code that I've imported. There's a currency list. Let's make it a new one. And a second one. That gives me two objects to work with and loads from the text files. Let's hook them up to the drop-downs. Just like with the PC controls, the powerful data source property lets you bind to data in an array or from SQL Server CE directly into your user interface. That hooks up the first country list, if I can type it correctly. Cut and paste will solve all of my typing issues. Now we need to tell the combo box which data to show. Because remember, that text file had both the lookup name and the display name. We want to tell it to show the display name. So we'll say the display member is display name, which is one of the properties of the objects in the list. Similarly, for the value member, I will use the lookup name. That takes care of the first one, and since I'm lazy, I'll cut and paste for the second one. Being very careful to change all the ones to twos. As I learned last night watching American Idol, if you forget 1-1, your demo doesn't work very well. The last step is to make a quick change to the lookup code that actually talks to the web service. Instead of using the data from the text box, I actually need to go and use the data from the combo box. You'll notice that Visual Studio was warning me that I've gotten rid of the text boxes and need to make the change. And selected value is automatically there, which makes entering the code straightforward. Again, I'll press F5, deploy this to the device, and let's look at the new application. Copying the files over, it's up, and you'll notice we have a much friendlier presentation now, using the desktop code that I wrote in C# in a VB application on the device. So let's do it again. We'll convert 15 this time, and let's do France francs and do a convert. And even though it's got the pretty display name, behind the scenes we'll use what the web service wants, connect, do the conversion, and bring it back 81 francs. Although I don't imagine people use many francs anymore. So I talked earlier about the different technologies available for developing on Pocket PC and smartphone. And with lots of technologies comes with lots of development environments. What I want to make sure that everyone understands and takes away from this session is that there's one development environment you care about for doing managed development, and that's Visual Studio. VS Live folks should be old hat using it. For people that have maybe done native development before, you don't have to use EVC or EVB. You can use Visual Studio.NET in its full glory. If you're targeting different screen resolution devices, you need an additional SDK, and you should all have that in your bag on the conference DVD. We have white papers on how to use it, the emulator images you need, and SDKs for developing for smartphone and Pocket PC. Install those, use Visual Studio, and you're ready to go. Similarly, if you're wondering what devices you can target, the great news is that every Pocket PC from 2002 forward has Compact Framework in ROM. You don't have to worry about deploying components or adding components to make Compact Framework work. You put your application on the device, run it, and it's there. Similarly, smartphone 2003 and forward, you put your application on the device, and it's there. If you have an MPX 200 device with you, perhaps you're interested in doing Compact Framework development for it, you can go check out the Motorola booth downstairs, and they're offering upgrades this week to the 2003 devices. So take it by, drop it off, get the update, and have fun developing for Compact Framework on smartphone. Bill did a really quick sneak peek in his keynote of some of the Visual Studio tools that are coming down the road. Ori did a great demonstration of how it works with devices. There's a more detailed, in-depth look, a full hour later this week. I'm planning on going to this session. I hope to see you guys there. I showed you what is admittedly a slightly cheesy application on Pocket PC. It illustrates web services, and it illustrates using desktop code on the device, but it's far from a real-world deployed application. When I was talking with Jonathan Wells, who actually did this talk last year, he said, "You've got to show MobileCop. It's so cool. Figure out how to put it in your session." And I was like, I know the way to show this in my session. It's a real-world deployed application that uses all of these technologies: web services, SQL CE, mobile applications, barcode readers, printers, and ruggedized devices. Mobile Cop is a field automation tool for a police force that's actually being used today in the US. Sadly, it means the days of challenging your speeding tickets because of a technicality are over. You can no longer say that the police officer filled in your driver's license number incorrectly or didn't get your name right, because they scan it directly from your driver's license with the barcode reader and populate it into the tool. It greatly reduces the data entry errors in the field and hopefully speeds up the traffic stops so you can get on your way at a more reasonable speed. You'll notice that they've hooked up background check as well, using the data capabilities of the device so they can do a quick background check after scanning the license to look on the back-end servers whether they need to hold you for something else. When they get back to the office, they actually have a desktop component as well. And this leverages all of the back-end servers, all of the web services, and all of the technologies that the mobile device uses. If an officer was in an accident scene and they did a little bit of notes in the field but didn't want to enter it on the spot, they could go back to their office and edit it later on the PC using ASP.NET. It talks to the same servers with the same web services with the same data that the mobile device uses. It's a very powerful example of how they all come together to build an end-to-end solution that really is in use. I could show another 20 minutes worth of slides on all the other features of Mobile Cop, but then I'd steal the thunder from the session later today. I actually think that the session is immediately after mine in this room, so if you're interested in more, you can sit and relax and talk to them later. We also have a session on sometimes connected development. And this is an interesting aspect that is new to mobile devices that hasn't existed on PCs before. These devices do have data connectivity, but you don't necessarily always have it available. You need to build your applications to be robust, to handle offline data, to understand how to work in that type of environment. There's an excellent example session on how to do this that talks about a real estate agent application and how they cache data locally, update when the network becomes available, and use that in both native and managed code. So it's an excellent session if you're interested in more about that. In summary, there's 3 things that I'd love for you to take away. Visual Studio is a development tool for mobile application development in managed code. You can do it with Pocket PC and smartphone by simply adding on an SDK that everyone has in their bag or can download from the web. And the compact framework is in ROM. You can do this today. When I was on the airplane and I was messing around with this, I was hacking together little applications because it was more interesting than watching a DVD. I can use the emulators. I have the power available to me to do that application development and then try it on a mobile device when it's appropriate. It's a great way to do application development and a ton of fun. I mentioned some of the resources that are available. You have the CD in your bag. It's a great way to get started. If you want to do more advanced development, you're interested in doing end-user applications and want to join our partner program, it's a good way to get in-depth technical information and assistance. And then you saw in the keynote today a little bit about mobile to market. We not only have the certification program, but we're actually running an application contest. There's $25,000 prize in 4 categories for an application submitted to mobile to market. You just have to write an application. The first 150 people get certification for free, and the best 4 in 4 categories get 25 grand. If I could think of a good application to write and I didn't work for Microsoft, you can bet that I'd be participating in the competition. It's a fantastic way to get visibility for your applications and some assistance through the distribution. There's a booth on that downstairs in our trade show if you're interested in more. I'm here all week. I'm going to take questions in just a few minutes during this session. I'm also at Ask the Experts on Thursday night, and I'll be in the booth today and on Friday just hanging out in front of devices if you want to talk in a more personal way. They inserted another slide on me. which is the same thing. And they took out my other slide, which was at the end. Imagine this is a great big flashing grade me, which is what used to be here until the slide was edited. I come to these sessions because I enjoy presenting to people. I hope you could see that. I would love your feedback on how I can get better. Stop by ComNet on the way to your next session. Fill in the session eval. Yes, you could win an MPX 200 for filling in the eval, but you'll make me very happy. Pretend you're Simon Cowell from American Idol. Tell me how I did well. Tell me how I could do better. I'll listen. I'll improve. And at MDC Amsterdam, I'll hopefully be even better. I would love to take your questions. Fire away. I couldn't possibly have answered them all. Yes? Right, so the question was, obviously I had a very straightforward deployment to my device. On some of our smartphone devices, the application security is a little bit tricky, and could I give some information on that? It's definitely true when you're developing for smartphone that certain mobile operators may have changed the settings of the phone to use signed applications for security measures. One of the aspects of the Mobile to Market program is a way for you to actually navigate that and make your application available to your users. For development, we have development handsets, and many mobile operators have developer programs where you can unlock the security on the phone to do that. If you have an MPX 200 device from AT&T, you can just go right away. You can start your development, deploy, and it works. Some of the operators in Europe, they have their developer programs, and through them, you can get access to the phone to deploy your applications, do testing and development.
2 o'clock Friday?
Yes, 2 o'clock Friday? Excellent. Smartphone security model, 2 o'clock on Friday. Well, we'll go into all the details on it. But in a high level, those are your avenues for getting development going. Yes? The question was, what's the availability of SQL CE on smartphones? It's not currently available through the 2003 release, but we do hear quite a bit of feedback on that. And I know that we're definitely seriously considering it for upcoming releases. It's hugely powerful and something we want to make available. The question was, is it deployable on an individual basis? Not currently. You can't use the SQL CE bits on smartphone today. You might want to stop by the Laguna talk, which is in a day or two, and Kevin Collins is presenting and probably has more information on that topic. So James, who's in our developer marketing group, nicely pointed out to me that we have a white paper as well on application security development on smartphone. windowsmobile.com/developer, and you should be able to find it there. Is it on our pretty DVD? Microsoft.com, Windows Mobile? So it should be there. And let me know afterwards if you can't find it. I'm happy to help you track it down. Any other questions? Yes, in the very back. Hi. I'm sorry, I didn't quite hear the question. Yes. So the question was around what are the specific development environments for smartphone. You currently have two choices. For native development, you can use embedded Visual C, C++, and for managed development, you can use Visual Studio.NET with VB or C#. There's no native VB support for smartphones, so if you want to do native development, C++ and C is your option. So good question. The question was, how do you decide between doing native or managed development on a mobile device? A lot of it has to do with the type of application you're building and the level of technical development you've done in the past for one of the languages. I find that people who are very familiar with C and C++ sometimes prefer doing it that way. They like the low-level control they get with that. Other developers who are very used to programming in Visual Basic on the PC or maybe using C#, managed code is definitely the way to go. With managed code, it's certainly easier and faster for you to get your application up and running on the device connecting to web services. If you're doing native development, you have to do a lot more legwork to make those types of applications available. So I would certainly say if you're interested in some of this connectivity things and using web services, absolutely managed code is the way to go. It's built around that. The development environment is built around that. And you'll have a much faster path to getting your application deployed than on the native side. I'm sorry, can you run? The question was around efficiency of native versus managed. The managed side is a just-in-time compiled environment, which I didn't mention in my slides directly. And so once your app is up and running, you actually have very good performance because you don't have to worry about interpreting the whole application every time. It's not exactly comparable to native code in every situation, but in many situations, it works very well. We have a specific session on how to do performance and being smart about performance in managed code later in the week. And so if that's a concern, there's definitely some very simple tips and tricks you can do that make the managed applications nice and zippy and work well. And I'd encourage you to check that out. Yes, in the very back.
So if your currency application would take off and really do well, you were going to support both the Pocket PC and the smartphone together doing so well. Do you write two applications, or where do you keep the commonality?
Excellent question. So assuming that my Microsoft career doesn't pan out and I actually want to run my currency converter as a full business and I do Pocket PC and smartphone, what kind of code leverage and sharing can I do between the two? I would absolutely encapsulate all of the logic for the application in a shared component. Pocket PC and smartphone overall are about 80% the same in terms of the underlying operating system and applications running on it. And it's the user interface where you see the major changes. And so, for example, all of the code to look up the web services, in fact, the DLL or the assembly that I wrote to parse the text file runs on both platforms already with no changes on my part. The compact framework is the same between the two with slight differences in the user interface. And so I put the commonality in the business logic, and then I can focus on just doing the user interface changes to make the application appropriate to each device. Since smartphone doesn't have a touch screen, is a little bit more one-handed driven, you have to make some different decisions there, but you can encapsulate that at the user interface side instead of at the logic side. It's a very, very powerful way, especially because the code will run on both platforms exactly the same. In fact, you can take a smartphone application, drop it on a Pocket PC, and it works when it's written in compact framework. Yes? The question was, can you write for smartphone using C++ managed extensions? Currently, both Pocket PC and smartphone only support C# and VB. There's no managed extension support today. It's something we're looking at providing in upcoming releases, but right now C# or VB are your choices. So the question was, if you have legacy C++ code, what's the best way to get that running on your mobile platform? I would certainly encourage you to look at some of the platform invocation methods. So taking your existing C++ code, leaving it as native C++ code, and then using the interop calls to access it, rather than having to go through the effort of converting it into a different language and recompiling it and doing that. I've done that on several occasions where I've been using external components that aren't available in managed code yet I really want to use them. And there's a lot of power available there to kind of access that without having to go through the effort of doing even though it's not really a language change, but migrating to a new language environment. It's a more efficient way to get there. Yes? The question was, is there a downside to that around having to support multiple different processors? The great news is that from Pocket PC 2000 forward, and all smartphone devices, they are all ARM-based. So you only have one processor you have to target. All the old MIPS and SH3 and the processors like that, you don't have to worry about. One processor across all devices, which makes it much easier to deploy. Any other questions? Yes? Feel free. I'm here to answer. That's a question that I'll have to defer to get an answer for you later. I am actually not very familiar with the ECMA specification for the BCL, so I couldn't tell you exactly what was supported. But we have a ton of compact framework gurus just down the hall, and I can hook you up after if you're interested. Yes?
You mentioned the GDI.
Yes. Correct.
What's the recommended methods?
That's an interesting question, actually. The question was whether, since GDI Plus is not directly supported, what's the recommended graphics platform? So you can do GDI type things for lines and stuff like that, but if you're looking at full-on image support and things like that, the picture box is there, but not the rest of it. I'm not actually sure if there's any third-party components available currently that do that, but pardon me, James might know, and we might be able to chat with him after about the best way to approach that. Did you have another? Oh, in the back, yes?
Two questions on the browser and the smartphone. First is that does it have SSL support, and secondly, does it have frames?
So 2 questions about the browser, SSL support and frames. Absolutely support SSL. Very, very important on a mobile device when you're looking at doing data connections to a back-end enterprise server. So yes, full SSL support. We don't currently support frames. As you can imagine, on a small screen, it's a little tricky to figure out how to present those. The current devices do not have that support in them.
Is there any plan to have frames?
The question was, any plans to add frame support in the future? It's definitely something we've heard lots of comments on from our customers. We're looking at ways to support that, but I'm not sure on specific timelines. Yes? The question was another browser question. What about CSS style sheets? We do support CSS as of smartphone 2003. It's one of the new additions to the web browser on the 2003 Pocket PC and smartphone devices. Something that we've been eager to include for a long time, and it's nice to have available. I was actually browsing some of our Moblog sites that are out there on my smartphone, and they showed up the way they were supposed to look because the CSS support was there. So with 2003 forward, that is available. The question was, is support for infrared and Bluetooth available? Infrared is available on all Pocket PC and smartphones currently. Bluetooth is available on some of the devices. So for example, the device I was demoing today has Bluetooth support. Some of the smartphones that are coming out in the near future have it. There's a couple of smartphones out in Europe today with it. The MPX currently does not have it, but there are more and more coming out every day. The question was whether VisualStudio.net provides access to the Bluetooth capabilities. I don't believe we have built-in support for Bluetooth or IR directly in the compact framework, but it's certainly something that you could leverage the APIs for through the platform indication. Any other? Oh, you said you had a list. Fire away.
It's ironic with the CAD file that actually all the effort
The comment was that it's ironic, don't you think, that CAD files are on smartphone and Pocket PC when the desktop is moving to a more MSI model. We always look at what the desktop is doing in terms of deployment scenarios. I certainly expect that as we get more and more integrated with Visual Studio, you'll see some changes, but I don't know about any concrete plans in that area right now. Yes. Hi. Are you talking about on the desktop or on a device? So the question was whether you can do a side-by-side install of 1.1 and 2.0 of the compact framework on a device. I'm actually not sure the answer to that since I haven't played with any of the next generation compact framework bits yet. A good person to ask would be the people doing the session for the next generation. They could tell you. And if you're not going to that, I'm happy to help you find the right person after. The question was, is 2.0 available? I don't actually think we've made any announcements around when a next release would be out. So no, not yet. Any other questions? Well, thank you very much for coming. You were a great audience. I appreciate you taking the time to come to my session as opposed to many of the others that were a choice available. So thank you for your time. I hope you enjoyed it. I had fun, and enjoy the rest of the session in San Francisco. Thank you.